I was 15 or 16 years old, and I got into photography through a friend, Brian Pieper. And I was a kid who wasn't really good at many things. I was a bit lazy, didn't like studying that much. I was kind of interested in visual things, but when I landed on photography, when I borrowed a camera and I actually took a photograph and it worked, I thought, this is for me. So that's how I initially got involved in photography. And Brian had a dark room behind his bungalow, behind his parents' milk bar in Caulfield, and I'd go down there and learn to develop and print and all those things. And I probably wouldn't have even achieved that if it hadn't been for Brian, really. I probably wouldn't have gone out and done those things myself. Loading film in the cupboard, climbing into the cupboard and loading up film into Patterson reels. And I learned all that stuff the sort of the interesting way. I also started getting interested in student politics about that time. I had a couple of friends who were much more sophisticated than me, I might add, about student issues, about the Vietnam War, about socialism, communism and things like that. And I started going along to a few rallies, and I borrowed a friend's Canon camera. It was just a little simple rangefinder, and I went along and took a number of photographs at two of the moratoriums when I was around about 17 years of age. I estimate it was about 1971. And one of those images, which is the opening image of the campaign exhibition at Old Parliament House and the book of the same name, which is coming out soon, that to me, it's like there's a knife going through Australian society. It's like we're leaving that old Australia of the post-war years, of the 50s and 60s, of men with felt hats and Gladstone bags waiting to go home from work. And there's this Che Guevara type who's standing up on the light post of Parliament House at Spring Street. And it's like, here's the new Australia being born. And being part of that whole student youth culture thing in the early 70s, when the Whitlam government came into power, was a very exciting time. It was a time of a lot of artists and writers, photographers, people coming back to Australia to work, seeing it as a place of great opportunity. And of course it was. I mean, a lot of great things happened. I'm not saying everything that was great about the Whitlam government, but certainly in the arts and a number of other policy areas, the Whitlam government really did change the face of Australia. And of course, by 1975, John Kerr and Malcolm Fraser took that away. So those were experiences that were seared upon my consciousness. Those were two of the experiences, in a sense, the Vietnam moratoriums and November the 11th, 1975, that gave me a direction. And certainly with my political photography and probably as a documentary photographer. Being at Paran College in 1975 on November the 11th, and being down in the basement studio, and the technician Murray White had the radio on, and we were all listening to Parliament, and it came out that Whitlam had been sacked by the Governor General, and I don't know, the word got through to us that there was going to be a rally in the city square. So there was no place like where the action was. So I jumped into my car probably, or got a tram and got up into the city, and we all marched down to Government House and stomped our feet and raised our fists, and I took a few photographs of that. And then we walked around to Albert Street in South Melbourne, corner of Albert and Moray Street in South Melbourne, and there I took probably I think a very historic photograph of Australia, and it's a spontaneous ride of protesters out in the street, and there's a police horse chasing a protester through the crowd, and just to the left is a guy carrying a placard, and it's got "Fraser causes chaos," and it encapsulates in one image what was going on. The shot's never really been used, I don't think. I don't think it's ever been published from memory, but it's quite an interesting image in our nation's history. We've all got the shots of Gough Whitlam up on the steps of Parliament House saying, "Well, may we say, God save the Queen, because nothing will save the Governor General." But on a street level, that's the kind of reaction that was happening. And there's another image that follows, which is actually quite a boring image, really, but in context and what it says, It's a street protest coming up Swanson Street in December the following month of 1975, and I think it's a guy called Andrew Hewitt from memory leading the march, and there's a banner with Fraser, "You will never be our Prime Minister." Well, of course, a few weeks later, Fraser was our Prime Minister, and that was an incredible shock to see what the Labor Party had brought to people taken away. And that's the seed of all the political photography I've done since. With the other work that I've done, I've got definite political views, and you can probably gauge those, but I've always attempted to be fair about what I've done. My approach to photography is to be an observer, and to, it's the old fly on the wall, to stand back and to just photograph and let people make up their minds, because people surely will make up their minds what they think about politics. And people, I've got to say that people are really engaged about politics. I was a bit fearful when I put the campaign up at Old Parliament House that people would go, because people say to you, "Oh, don't vote for the bastards, it only encourages them," and what a pack of wankers, and all this sort of stuff. But when you put the work up on the wall and people come in, their eyes light up and they see a photo that takes them back to another place and another time, particularly of things that were before, that have maybe passed away 10 years ago or longer, and they fondly remember those things, whether it be Conservative or Labor Party. It brings out memories in people. In terms of political perception in photography, I think, like I say, I just take the photographs and let people gauge what they want out of those photographs. I'm kind of like the fly on the wall. It might not apply so much to the first image, which I call 2 Bob, which is of 2 photographs, just straight on portraits of Bob Hawke 2 days before he became Prime Minister. Bob's sombre in the first image and smiling in the other. And it's really about how people perceive politician. One person's political hero is another person's antichrist. The other image, I think, that's probably more related to being a fly on the wall would be the family that sings together, and it was taken on election night in 2004 of the Howard family up on stage singing the national anthem. Now, there are some shots that just happen in front of you that are significant. Some shots you don't know what you've got until you process the film or look at them on a computer monitor, but other shots you just know they're there at the time, and I knew that shot was there. I was fortunate enough just to be in the right position, and all I had to do is just lift the camera. And there they are singing. Now, I don't know about you, but if I asked my family to get up on stage and sing the national anthem, I know what they would tell me. And to me, I found it quite amazing that Howard would get up and do that. But it's a statement about conservative family values, probably Christian values, and it's probably something that Howard's learnt from Bush and the Americans. It's really full-on conservative politics. But at the same time, you could look at that photograph and say, well, what a happy family, what a strong family. And really, where you're coming from politically is about, some people like it, some people don't.